I want to talk about the 10.19 patch notes. So, Set 4 releases tomorrow, as in the day that I will be uploading this video. So, it comes with patch 10.19. End of Set 3, moving on to Set 4. I'm not going to go through all of the individual traits, origins, classes. I did that on a previous video, and there are plenty of people who have much more experience in the PvE that can tell you what you need to be playing, what is good, and how to play them. I believe Mort Dog did a rundown a couple days ago that will give you some insight onto what a lot of the champions do and what direction they're going. I could break that down, but that was a 2-hour video, so I'm not going to break that down. So let's talk about 10.19. There's a nice little cheat sheet. You can get the cheat sheet pretty much anywhere. Tells you all the origins and all the classes, along with what each of them do. You can grab that pretty much anywhere. We're getting some new little legends. They're actually super cool. One of the really cool things about them that they did was if you do one of the emotes, they break out in the song, and you can actually like time all 3 of them up so that the song syncs up. And that's really cool. But it's nice. Get a bunch of new little legends for everyone to like. Star Shard. So this is a new thing. So when you wanted to upgrade your little legend, it used to be you had to just farm up some eggs, as in buy a bunch of eggs with like actual money, and pray that they are the same little legend as one you already have. They've added a new system called Star Shards. So that way you can actually upgrade the little legend you want to upgrade. You can look into it for more information. In general, they should be on whatever the new pass is. You should be getting some on the new pass. I don't think you can buy them. I honestly don't know. They might be rewards for playing TFT. But I believe the way you're supposed to be getting them is through the Fate Season Pass that they're going to be launching soon. Arenas. We got new arenas. They're actually in gift form this time when I show them to you. So, take a look. They are more interactive than previous boards that we've had. You can actually click various parts of them and stuff kind of happens. So, nice little upgrades as we go along. So now we're going to get into some of the stuff that's going to... There's going to be some angst here with what they've done to ranked. We're all just going to have to get over it because it's the way it's going to be. So, essentially, now, I'll go ahead and read this out and then kind of explain what's happening. Most of you will start Fates in Iron 2. Iron 2. If you ended in Diamond 1, you will start in Iron 1. Masters Plus will start in Bronze 4. I don't know why they picked these particular rankings, because they might as well just reset the whole ladder. I'm not quite sure where they came up with these. I would have just reset the ladder. I don't know what's going on here. I can't even begin to explain why they're going to these particular 3 points rather than just doing straight ladder reset. I don't know. Galaxy rewards come out in patch 10.21. So next patch, so 2 weeks, that's 10.20. Another 2 weeks, 10.21. So it'll be a month, and you'll get your Galaxies rewards. Alright, now I'm going to have to... I wish they had to explain this a bit more. So, now, players who finish 4th place or better will gain at least 10 LP. While players who finish 5th place or worse will now lose at least 10 LP. That's a big jump. That's a big jump going from 5th to 4th. I would have liked this to accompany with, like, new scaling for 1st through 3rd and 6th through 8th. Because that's a 20-point difference between 4th and 5th. There are going to be times where you get 1st and you don't get 30. So the difference between getting 4th and 5th will be greater than 4th and 1st. That's putting a lot of value in making sure people go 4th place. That's probably the goal here. I think it's been overshot. That's kind of my thought. Now, I could be wrong here. They could have changed the scaling for LP gains. You could win and get like 40 LP for all I know. Or probably, well, 40 actually does happen. Like 60, 70 LP for all I know. In which case, the ladder has been completely changed to be something foreign from what we have understood in the past. I honestly don't know. These are big changes to ranked. And it might be a bit more than I think Riot bargained for. I kind of wish that they had talked more to the players about this before putting in these ranked changes so people understood what was going on. I think pretty much everyone knew that there was going to be some sort of MMR reset. I think the expectation was it was going to be kind of a soft reset. So I finished in Diamond 4. I kind of expected to be in like Gold. I didn't expect to be all the way back in Iron. That's basically just a ladder reset to me. I don't know what rank's going to look like. I don't think anyone really knows what rank's going to look like now. I suspect the end goal was to get ranked to be more on par with what ranked looks like in League. So in League, if you are Diamond, you are damn good at the game. In TFT, if you are Diamond, you spend a lot of time playing this game. I'm not going to say you're good, because I play the game. I'm not great. I just know the mechanics of the game and play it to a moderate level. I'm not great. I need to put more time into the game to really get good at the game. But in general, in League, if you're Diamond, you're really freaking good. In TFT, you just understand how the game works. So moving on to system changes. So the big system change this patch is the Chosen mechanic. Gone are the galaxies, in with the Chosen. So here's the way Chosen works. Occasionally, a Chosen champion will come up in your shop. These champions are already 2-star and cost 3 times the normal 1-star price, and come with a little extra boost. So, in general, well, the other thing is, the Chosen Champion counts as 2 of their trait. This is actually really big, and I'll go into that once I finish talking about the rest of Chosen. Each Chosen Champion gets 200 bonus HP. Not terrible. That's a free belt. And either 400 HP, 30% spell power, 30 AD, or 25 reduced mana cost. Now, before anyone wonders, these are not random. Each champion has a set mode where it gets one of these buffs. It's already been predetermined which champions get which buffs. They are in this article if you want to look at it. I'm not going to go through it because it's something that you probably will understand as you play the game. Also given is the tier odds for finding a Chosen champion. So, you will not find a tier 2 Chosen until you hit level 4. You will only see level 1 level 1 cost Chosens at level 1 through 3. You will not see 3 cost Chosens until you hit level 5. I'm going to highlight this one. This one's going to be one to remember because I think a lot of people are going to be rushing to 5 to start seeing these 3-star Chosens. The next breakpoint is 7. Now, as we've kind of already seen throughout TFT history, 7 is kind of a breakpoint for when you go all in. If you're like struggling at the game, it's not uncommon to level to 7, roll all your gold down to go all in, just to try to get into top 4. So, the reward for doing that is you now have a shot at getting a 4-cost Chosen. At the same time, you will not see a 5-cost Chosen until you hit level 9. I think this one in particular, this just means you're almost never going to see a 5-cost Chosen. Because if you've already leveled to 9, odds are you already have your build in play and you already have a Chosen that you are playing. I think it's going to be very unlikely that you're going to you're going to be level 9 and not have it Chosen. Odds are what's going to happen is you're going to hit one of these breakpoints and you're going to sell the Chosen that you have for the chance of finding So essentially, when you hit level 5, you might sell your chosen. Why? So you could start finding the 3-star chosen. Same thing with level 7. When you hit level 7, you might sell your chosen so you can start finding the 4-cost chosens. So, in general, what I think about chosen is going to probably be a pretty significant change to how a lot of people play the game. A lot of people tunnel vision builds, myself included. If I get 3 cyber opener, like, boom, I'm going 6 cyber. Easy. Wipe my hands, I'm done. That was easy. Don't even have to think. That is going to be a bit different. Because the Trojan counts as 2 of a trait. This means that your comp is probably going to end up revolving around whatever you got as your chosen. So if you get, for example, a chosen, let's say, Shade. Chosen Shade means you have to run no other Shade units to proc the Shade, awkward tongue twister, to proc the Shade trait. So that champion could just be kind of your end game build, where you just kind of run that champion throughout the duration of the game. And you're going to build your comp around that single chosen. What we're less likely to see is one-trickers. One-trickers are pretty punished by this. Because if you are one-tricking and you get a chosen that is optimal for a different composition, and you skip over that, you are forfeiting LP. That was LP that you could have had. If you get the most optimal chosen in the game, and you hop over that sucker and completely ignore it because you're one-tricking a different build, you, sir, are making a mistake. So, you're going to have to keep an eye out for what chosens are the most optimal in various comps, and understand that if you get a particular chosen, you might have to pivot, because that chosen might be too powerful to pass up. This also will probably impact people's itemization. I think it's going to... one of the biggest issues that ended up happening in set 3, in my opinion, was you got an item for a particular build, and that item tunnel visioned you down a particular path. Most notably, blue buff. If you got a blue buff, you were either running Astro Snipers or Star Guardian Sorcerers. Now, you might have to take a second to sit back before you slam that blue buff. You might end up trying to slam more flexible items, probably more defensive items, than offensive items. So I'm really looking forward to the chosen mechanic. I think it's going to make people have to think a lot differently on how they play the game, because at the moment there is so much tunnel vision on various compositions, it's not even funny. Like set 3 was just zoom down that one composition that you started with. So they go through all the champions that get the particular chosen buffs. I'm not going to go through them all, but it's a good thing to kind of know offhand how various champions function when they are chosen. Leveling. This is the other big change into how the game is going to be played. So the cost of level 7 has increased by 4 XP. The cost of level 8 is increased by 6 XP. The cost of level 9 is increased by 14 XP. So pretty much everyone got the level 8 before they died. There was very rarely a circumstance where you would die at level 7. Usually that would happen if you went all in and didn't hit anything and you were already like really bad. Really just down on your luck that game. That sometimes happens. You're going to see a lot more people dead at level 7. You're going to see a lot more people dead at level 8. Level 9 will not be as free as it used to be. In general, I've found that most of the time, if you top 4 the game, you almost always hit level 9. That's not going to happen anymore, I think. I think you're only going to see 2, maybe 3 people a lobby ever hit level 9. If that. So, the level pacing for the end game and when you're supposed to level and roll down, that's going to change. We're just going to have to get used to it. But the theory behind it really hasn't. You're going to hit some break point where you're really far behind and you need to get better, and you might level to 7 or 8 and roll down all your gold there. That really hasn't changed. I don't think that's going to change. But that's the way you should be thinking about it. And understanding that you might not make it up to these next levels as if you are like open forting your way through the game. Shops. This is a pretty big change, I think. It really hurts people who are bad at re-rolling. Consecutive shops will not repeat unbought champions. So if you buy a champion, that champion can show up in the next shop. If you do not buy a champion, that champion will not show up in the next shop. Why is this kind of significant and important? One of the things that like top players do is they often just buy 4-star and 5-star costs that they don't actually want. So that way they have better odds of finding the 4-star and 4-star. The 4-cost and 5-cost champions that they actually do want. Now, you skip over that. You do not do that. Why? Because it makes it more likely you're going to see those champions in the next shop roll. So, the expectation now is that you should be passing on champions you don't want, so that way they don't show up in the next shop. Also, it punishes people when they are fast re-rolling and miss champions that they actually do want. Because if you re-roll, you will not see that champion in the next shop. So this probably won't impact us like a low-tier noobs at the game, but high-level champions are going to change their how they roll, specifically in the end game, because of this change. You just won't see the hoarding of boards every round or when they're rolling down, because they need to find the champions they actually need rather than hoarding up champions that they don't need and just playing to sell anyway. Alright, carousel. Big changes to the carousel. We will not be Mort Dogged as much as we have been in the past, yet we will still all be Mort Dogged once again. So, the first carousel, most games, be all items plus 1 duplicate. Pretty simple. Some carousels, however, will be 11% utility, which means it should be tier glove and then another random item, and I guess it's 3x of each of those. It's an interesting way to call it utility. I don't really consider glove utility. Glove's an offensive item. Anyway, 11% defense, which means it will have 3 cloaks, belts, and vests. 11% offensive, sword, bow, rod. 1.5% will have all spats, and we can all be happy when we start a game all off with a spat and be really confused as to what our comp needs to be. And then 1 out of 20 games will have no, that's not 1 out of 20, that's 1 out of 200. Yeah, 1 out of 200 games will have all Force of Natures. So the idea here is that you're not going to get screwed as much unless you get... The only way you really get screwed is if you get the all defense and you're the guy that ends up with the cloak. Cloak is a lot better now, and we'll get into the item changes later. Second carousel. So the idea here was to make the second carousel more consistently 1 item every time. It was really awkward when you got to the second carousel and your second carousel was completed items, because you were sitting on these particular 2 to 3 items, and usually when you got the second carousel, you were going to pick an item that was going to complete some core item to whatever composition you were leaning down. So if I had a tier and I got to the second carousel, I really wanted another tier, and then I got angry when it was all completed items and I couldn't use any of them with a tier. Well, sorry. That's being undone for the second carousel. And this was a really big problem with the second carousel, and a little bit of a problem with the third carousel. Was when you had these components, you were planning on hunting down particular items to build your comp, and those items did not show. Like, weren't even on the carousel. You didn't have a shop. And you had to adjust in a completely different direction. You were already having to deal with the fact that you might not get that item because you weren't first on the carousel. You're not in 8th place. Now you had to worry about, oh, is my item even going to show up on the carousel? Anyway, so nearly all of them, 95%, will have one of every item. 5% will have 3 spats and 6 random items. Just rolling from there. Third carousel. So third carousel is kind of the same. So this is where things get a little different. So 30% chance it's going to be the same as what you normally would find on the first carousel, with one of every item plus 1 random duplicate. This is the one that kind of confuses me. So totally random items. We're just going to make every item completely random. So the idea here is to make sure that you're flexible. The problem is this third carousel and this fourth carousel, that's usually around the time I'm trying to complete items. So I already made 1, maybe 2 items, and now I'm trying to get the third item to like really make my build strong. You get a pretty big boost after this third carousel. So I'm not too sure on this, and I kind of would like to see this just go back to being 80% here. That's just my thought. I'm fine with these two because these two add a good bit of variance in the game. Having to fight over a spatula, I think, is actually kind of important in the game. I think there should be spat builds that are particularly powerful, almost to the level of Blender, but not actually to the level of Blender. But I'm very unsure about this particular one. Fourth carousel, same as the second. The idea being that you're supposed to be completing items here. Fifth carousel is where we start getting interesting. So the fifth carousel typically is, if I recall correctly, and I make sure I have my carousel count timings down, all completed items. To my knowledge, it has always been pretty much all completed items. Now, there is a 50% chance that you get entirely random items that are not completed. I think the idea being that they wanted to tone down the power spike of the fifth carousel. Fifth carousel is a very, 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 very significant power spike to a lot of builds. It is often the time where you grab that one item that is so key to your build that it takes you up to 11. You were maybe a 4. Now you are an 11. Whereas there were times on that carousel with fully completed items where you went from being a 6 and you left and you were still a 6 because the items that were available to you on the carousel were pretty useless. Now, that's just kind of the nature of carousels, especially if you're in first or second. You're not always just going to get an item that's useful, and you just kind of have to adjust. But having all uncompleted items and it being completely random what items show up, that's awkward to me. You're still trying to hunt down probably to complete one item if you're lucky, but that power spike you hit from what is now effectively happening like 50% of the time of having fully completed items is really high. I'm guessing they wanted to tone that down. I'm not quite sure how that's going to look in game. I'm going to have to play to figure out. Anyway, there's a 3% chance that for each of these. So these are all completed items that are all either sword, vest, belt, bow, cloak, tier, gloves, rod. That's still a bit awkward to see. But oftentimes you could work your way around that because they've increased the how do I want to put this? They've increased a lot of the flexibility of a lot of items. So if you like get a rod but you're running an AD build, there's still things you can actually do with that rod that aren't terrible. Same thing with a sword. If you get all swords and you're like, I don't know, I'm running spellcasters. Well, you can grab a Giant Slayer, and that's 20% damage buff to you. Yay! Actually, I don't think Giant Slayer does that anymore. I think we're going to get to that. 6 carousel, fully completed items. And half random components. So half the carousel is going to be fully completed item, the other half is going to be fully random components. It's pretty rare that you actually take the random component. I always found that to be really rare because usually the completed item is much more useful. But sometimes you're just sitting on this half component and something shows up in there that's like, oh my god, I need this, and you grab it. It's supposed to help out those awkward times where you just have one uncompleted item and then these random items just aren't useful. You can just complete the one you have. I don't mind it. It just still kind of feels awkward to me, but I'm fine with it. Now onto the items. So we got a bunch of item changes. First, we're getting 2 new items. Swordbreaker is gone. It has been replaced with Gargoyle Stoneplate, which gives 2 armor and 12 armor and 12 MR to each enemy targeting the holder. So one thing that didn't happen too often in set 3 was solo item carriers, or solo front lines. The only solo front lines that off the top of my head I can really ever recall us using is Nico and Mech. And sometimes GP. Well, and GP, I guess. But GP was a unique situation. So the reason why solo frontliners weren't used is because they just got smoked. They just get blown up. You could run the biggest backline ever. Your frontline would get smoked. Everything would run into your backline, and your backline would get smoked. This, I've seen make things kind of immortal. This is a very strong item, actually. Very, very, very strong frontline item. If you organize your composition correctly. So if you organize your composition correctly, so a majority of your opponents are now targeting the holder of a Gargoyle Stoneplate, you get super tanky. You get really, really tanky. I've seen some talk that the MR side might get reduced because you can get the MR to be really, really high. And when you get really, really high MR, nothing ever kills you. Next change, Sunfire Cape. So they got rid of red buff. If you notice the theme between Swordbreaker and red buff, it was particularly a problem in set 2. These 2 items could go on Sivir, and Sivir was kind of notoriously good at spreading red buff and spreading disarm because she hit everything. So things that hit multiple units as auto attacks became really problematic with Swordbreaker and red buff. And then Swordbreaker and red buff were kind of useless everywhere else. So in set 3, so that was a problem in set 2. In set 3, red buff was really only good on blasters. It later became okay on Echo because Echo's ult hit everything, but Morello was better, obviously. And Swordbreaker just never saw any play in set 3. It was really only ever used in set 2 with some AoE AD users. But what they're doing is they're getting rid of red buff, but they still want to have the red buff effect outside of having a Morello. So the Sunfire Cape now applies to a random enemy within 2 hexes every second. Damage is now 25% of the affected user's maximum health as true damage over 10 seconds. So, you have a frontliner. It has Sunfire Cape. Every second, it will select a random enemy within 2 hexes, and it will apply the Grievous Wounds effect. The Grievous Wounds effect will make it lose 25% of its maximum health over 10 seconds. Okay? Kind of simple. I do think this item's actually kind of weak. You need to have a really... the problem is, this is an item that you're probably going to put on a frontliner. Only... you're going to want to put defensive items on your frontliner. So you're going to want to put Gargoyle Stoneplate on. This doesn't really offer any defensive bonuses at all. This just applies to Grievous Wounds effects. And I'm pretty sure Morello is probably better at doing it than Sunfire Cape. I don't think this is a good item. I don't think we're going to see much of it. Alright, item changes. Rod SP going down to 15. Fair. Rod Rod was really strong for adding 20 SP. Bloodthirster healing going down to 40%. Bloodthirster is a problem on units that de-aggro. So in set 3, like Shaco, when Shaco would ult something, get up to full health, and then kind of vanish somewhere else because he disappeared and has no more aggro anymore, became a problem. He became hard to focus down. So Bloodthirster getting a little bit of a nerf. Also, my understanding is AD is a lot better this set than previous set. I think there's a lot more AD champions overall. Chalice of Power duration. I never understood why Chalice of Power had a duration to it. I thought it was kind of silly. So now it's just lasting for an entire round. It's just a permanent effect for the round. Deathblade AD stat goes from 25 to 20. Yeah, you'd put a Deathblade on a Jhin and put a Hurricane on him and just kind of laugh. It's just 4-shot, always killed anything. And then he'd have an additional 50 AP. And then his regular shots killed anything. And that was a problem. So they reduced Deathblade. Dragon Claw's magic reduction goes from 50% to 60%. So Dragon's Claw, in my opinion, was an item that people only made when they had like 3 cloaks and were just staring at the game wondering why they had 3 cloaks. It's not a bad item, per se, but it wasn't like an item to take a build over the top. 60% magic reduction is a lot of freaking magic reduction. Don't be surprised if you see more Dragon's Claws this set. And see them being very good. Because 60% is a lot. Giant Slayer. So the 20% boost on Giant Slayer was a lot. It was probably too much. So they're reducing the baseline damage buff to 10%. But in return, they're buffing the HP bonus part to 90%. What's important about this is that in set 3, this 80% really didn't proc on a lot of things. There were only a handful of units that you could get this to proc on. Because the baseline requirement for Giant Slayer's bonus damage was... It was a pretty high bar to set. You essentially really only saw it against mech. In which case, Giant Slayer would absolutely destroy mech. But it seems like there's a lot more champions that have major HP bonuses, particularly the sheer number of brawlers that are in this set. There's a good number of like high-cost champions that have a lot of HP. Giant Slayer is still good, but it's not going to chew through an entire composition. It's just going to chew through their front line and whatever tanky HP unit that's in front of it. Rageblade is getting attack speed buff from 5 to 6. You never really saw Rageblade later in set 3. It was just Giant Slayer was probably more efficient. But we'll see what this does. Gunblade. So Gunblade healing is going down a lot. I am not quite sure why. If I had to guess, I would say the problem was probably Urgot. Urgot and champions who had really low mana costs. So particularly Aurelion Soul. Those two in particular I circle as issues with Gunblade. So with Urgot's problem was they say he executes, but in reality what he really did was do 5k true damage. So he would get 45% of 5k as a barrier on top of being a protector. That made him really hard to kill. So I think between that and some of the rapid casters that we had in set 3, they had to tone this down. Along with that, there's plenty of casters in set 4 that have pretty low mana pools. So I think this was kind of just a long time coming. It also, like, I know a lot of people complain. One of the things that they were trying to do was keep Bloodthirster in line with Gunblade. Keep these two numbers the same. I think it just didn't. It just wasn't going to work out. Especially once they added the bonus shielding that you could get with Gunblade. It just wasn't going to work out. Infinity Edge. This is actually a much better change than I thought it was going to be. So there was issues with there's been issues with Infinity Edge throughout its lifetime. So in set 2 and early in set 3, the way Infinity Edge worked was it was a pure percent boost to damage you did when you crit. So there's a few champions that this blew up on, notably Shaco and Kha'Zix. They'd crit and it'd just be an instant kill. It was just like, okay, I can't do anything about this. So they changed how Infinity Edge worked. So they made it so Infinity Edge instead did only a 20% boost to crit damage, but you always critted. And that was a pretty good change. That kind of eliminated how Infinity Edge kind of just like blew up over everything. But the issue is in this set is Assassin. So Assassin as a trait get bonus crit chance. And there's been champions in the past that it gets bonus crit chance. So you would think that building an IE on them should, air quotes, be something you try to do. But because IE already granted 100% crit chance, why would you put it on a champion whose trait bonus gives them increased crit chance? So, to change that, you now only get 75% crit strike chance. So it's not 100, 75%. So you can add on top of that the additional percent chance you get from playing Assassins. Also, each additional 1% crit chance strike will now, over 100%, will translate into 1% crit strike damage. So let's suppose that you get Assassin bonus, and the Assassin bonus adds 50% crit chance. At the same time, you have Infinity Edge equipped, which grants 75% crit chance. That's 125% crit chance. That's actually not feasible. So you crit 100% of the time, but you're 25% over. That 25% over will now be 25% bonus crit strike damage. On top of, I'm assuming that Infinity Edge still has the 20% crit strike bonus, which means that it's now 45% crit strike bonus. Which I think they cover later how bonus stacking works, and that should be correct now, because previously that would have been a different number. So this is a very good change. Also, I don't think they say it here, but I think Infinity Edge is also no longer unique, which means I think, don't quote me on this, which means you can stack Infinity Edges. So you can get up to 150% crit chance, which turns into 50% crit strike bonus damage, along with the fact that you had 2, so you're at like 90%. It's a double Infinity Edge. In that case, will actually be good if we're allowed to stack it because it's no longer unique. I'm not sure that's actually true or not. That's not said in the patch notes. Jewel Gauntlet is crap, so they're upgrading it from the damage up to 50%. That said, there's a couple champions that Jewel Gauntlet's actually optimal on. There's a handful of champions that are probably going to be more efficient running Infinity Edge and Jewel Gauntlet than Rabadon's Death Cap. I think a good example of that I've seen is Kindred. So Kindred benefits quite a bit from having an IE because she's a hunter. So she gets a whole bunch of auto attacks off that will now crit. At the same time, she has an ultimate that launches at enemies and does actually a pretty significant amount of damage. Being able to have that crit as well is pretty useful. So I think there are a good number of champions that you will see IE and Crit Gauntlet being run on. Luden's Echo's damage, reduced by 20. I don't know what this does. There were a few champions that could really take advantage of Luden's Echo. I don't know what they are in this set. Quicksilver duration going from 10 to 12. I'm assuming this is because rounds are a bit longer than they've used to be. But that's kind of an assumption on my part. Rabadon's Death Cap. I didn't know Rabadon's Death Cap worked like this, where it was a 50% bonus to SP. I did not know that. I thought it was just a hard SP number. Well, anyway, it's becoming a hard SP number. So if I'm reading this correctly, you now get the it's 15 for the rod. I'm gonna go back and double check. It's 15 for the rod, so you get 15 for the rod, another 15 for the second rod, plus 40. So it's 70 SP that you gain from putting a death cap on something. If I'm reading that right. Yeah, no wonder. This is insane. No wonder death cap was so freaking good. Hurricane. Bolts can now have critical hits. Bolts now have unlimited range. I don't know why they... So, well, I understand why. Jin was probably why bolts couldn't critically hit. But whatever. Spear of Sojourn. Very significant change to Spear. So, the way Spear used to work. After you ulted, every auto attack gave you an additional 18% mana. So it was very, very, very significant on champions with high mana pools. Notably Echo and Janna. Those are the two off the top of my head. Or really good. It was good on Thresh too, but mostly Echo and Janna. That's being changed to now you gain an additional 5 mana per auto. So like even before the first cast, you now gain an additional 5 mana per auto. That's big. That's actually big. That makes this item way more useful without making it significantly overpowered on specific champions like Echo, Thresh, and Janna. I slow clap Riot for this change. It's probably the best change in this patch, in my opinion. Static Shiv, damage going down from 85 to 80. I don't think Shiv is actually a build in set 4, or at least I don't know of one. I'm going to have to pass on that one. Miscellaneous are 5 seconds for a new set back. We get our new 5-second bonus. Grievous Wounds. So there was a bug with Grievous Wounds that nobody noticed. Apparently, Grievous Wounds apparently did twice as much damage as it was supposed to. And it's done this since release. Like, nobody realized this. That bug has been stomped out. So your Morellos and your red buffs aren't going to be as... So just so you know, this was the Grievous Wounds effect. So when you were healing something, that was impacted by Grievous Wounds. That healing was like reduced to like 30%, if I recall. Whereas it was supposed to be reduced to 50%. It was really weird, and nobody noticed it because there aren't a lot of champions that actually do healing. But, yeah. This was a weird one that I'm surprised none of us as players ever caught. Congrats. Trap Claw now has its own unique visual effect. Yeah, I never really... The only time you ever notice Trap Claw actually proccing is when the shield actually goes down. So, we have a new visual effect for it. Completed items can no longer drop from orbs. Now, I don't know if this means in the PvE round, because there's always been a PvE round where you got a completed item. The PvE round in round 5, you always got a completed item. I'm not quite sure if they've gotten rid of that or not. I don't know. My assumption was it stayed. Honestly, don't know. Or this was a bug that completed items were just dropping out of orbs for some reason. I don't know. Spatula items can now drop from PvE rounds, but only if you have at least one in the trade. Okay, so with spat items, they got rid of the ability for spat items to be dropping in PvE rounds. They did that because everyone complained about getting super low rolled with a spat item that they could not use in their composition. So now what they've done is if you have that trait in play, that spat item could drop. That's the change they've made. It used to be you could get it at any time, then they got rid of it. Now they're bringing it back, but with this limiting factor that you have to have that trait already in play to get that specific spat item. Better, not sure how much I'm going to be in love with that. We'll see. I think the one advantage of this is it gives you an opportunity to drop your chosen to find a different chosen. That's probably the only real advantage I see of this. Adjust the type of orbs and contents across all stages of the game. No table to go along with this, so I got nothing to say here. Hopefully less Nikos in the early game. All damage percent... Okay, so this is a pretty big change. All damage percent amps now stack additively instead of multiplicatively with one another. So items can still multiply with traits, but not other items. Okay, so they've created sets of pools for particular buffs. So I believe the pools are trait, class. No, it's not trait, class, and origin. It's item, trait, and it might be champion is the last one. Within these pools, buffs are multiplicative. Outside of these pools... No. Okay. Within these pools, they are additive. Outside these pools, they are multiplicative. So, if you have an item that adds a 3 times buff, and you have a trait that adds a 2 times buff, it used to be you got a... man, I messed this one up. This one's tricky to explain what's happening. But essentially what's happening is we're not going to have explosive builds anymore. Like super explosive high rolls. Okay. I need to take a breath so I can explain this properly. So, if you have an item that adds a ×2 buff, and an item that adds a ×3 buff, and a trait that adds a ×2 buff. The 2 items are now additive, so they become a ×5 buff rather than a ×6 buff. But when it comes with the trait, it now becomes a ×10 buff. The trait and the items multiply, but the items are now additive. Okay? So there's 3 pools for that. If I recall correctly, I believe it's class, trait, and item. I believe. It might be champion, trait, and item, actually. Because some champions have their own kind of buffs like that. But, essentially this means you're not going to blow shit the fuck up. This was a problem particularly with Jin. Jin in set 3. Because Jin had a humongous multiply buff on his 4th shot. You are now not going to get that multiply buff along with everything. It's not going to just rain down death on that 4th shot every time. You have a chance to survive the 4th shot. Probably not, but I'm going to say you have a chance. Alright, so that's it for these notes for set 4. I don't have too much to add. I don't want to go through the individual champions' traits. I've already done a previous video on that, kind of giving my thoughts, and there are people who have been playing the PvE religiously that have much better knowledge of what's good right now. So, when y'all see this, set should be out within a few hours of me posting this, and you should all enjoy it. All hail set 4. Yay. Peace out.